What happens when someone confesses that the identity they've lived for decades is completely false, and they do it on live television? Stop the tape. Stop everything right now. Dr. Phil's voice cut through the studio like a knife. In his hand, a white envelope. On stage, a woman whose face had just gone pale. And in that moment, 30 years of lies were about to unravel in front of millions. What she said next would change not just her life, but the lives of everyone who thought they knew her. It had started like any other Dr. Phil episode. The green room buzzing with nervous energy, producers checking sound levels, audience members settling into their seats. But this wasn't going to be any other episode. Sarah Mitchell sat in the guest chair, her hands trembling slightly. To everyone watching, she was there to discuss family estrangement. A common enough topic. A safe enough topic. But Dr. Phil had done his homework. And in that white envelope he carried onto the stage was something that would shatter everything. The show began normally. Dr. Phil walked out to applause, took his seat, exchanged pleasantries. Sarah smiled that practiced smile she'd perfected over 3 decades. Sarah, you're here today because your adult children have cut off contact with you. Dr. Phil began, his tone measured, professional. You say you don't understand why. Is that correct? Yes. Sarah nodded, her voice steady. I've been a good mother. I don't know what I did wrong. But Dr. Phil's next question changed everything. Sarah, before we talk about your children, I need to ask you something. He leaned forward slightly, and those who knew Dr. Phil recognized that shift. It was the shift that meant he'd found something. Is Sarah Mitchell your real name? The studio went completely silent. You could hear the cameras whirring, the soft hum of the lights. Sarah's face froze. What do you mean? She stammered. Dr. Phil didn't break eye contact. It's a simple question. Is Sarah Mitchell the name you were born with? The pause stretched out. 5 seconds. 10. The audience held their breath. No. Sarah whispered, and with that single word, everything began to collapse. What nobody in that studio knew yet was that this wasn't just about a name change. Dr. Phil stood up. He walked to the edge of the stage, and in a move that shocked everyone, he turned to the cameras and said, Hold on. Cut to commercial. Now. The audience gasped. Dr. Phil never stopped the show. Never broke the fourth wall like this. Producers scrambled. The director's voice crackled through headsets. But Dr. Phil was already walking towards Sarah, who had started to cry. Sarah, or whoever you are. Dr. Phil said, his voice softer now but firm. I need you to tell me the truth. Not for the cameras. Not for the show. For those children of yours who deserve to know who their mother really is. The commercial break felt eternal to those in the studio. Audience members whispered to each other. Production staff exchanged confused glances. And Sarah Mitchell sat in that chair, her entire body shaking. When the cameras came back on, Dr. Phil made a decision that would define his career. We're going to do something we've never done before on this show. Dr. Phil announced to the audience and the cameras. We're going to have a conversation that might be uncomfortable. It might be painful. But it needs to happen. Sarah has agreed to tell us the truth. He turned to her. Start from the beginning. Who are you really? Sarah took a breath that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. My real name is Rebecca Walsh. I was born in Boston in 1967. But in 1991, I became Sarah Mitchell. I took that name. I took that identity. And I've been living as her for 33 years. The audience erupted in shocked murmurs. Dr. Phil raised his hand for silence. Why? He asked simply. And then Sarah began to tell a story that nobody saw coming. I was running, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. From an abusive relationship. From a man who told me he'd kill me if I ever left. I had a 2-year-old daughter, Emma. I couldn't take her with me. I had to leave her behind to save my own life. The studio was so quiet you could hear people's breathing. I went to a women's shelter. They helped me disappear. They gave me Sarah Mitchell's identity. She was someone who had died young, no family, no one looking for her. I became her. I got a new social security number through underground channels. I moved across the country. And I started over. Dr. Phil sat back down, and for one of the rare times in his career, he looked genuinely shaken. And your children? The ones who are estranged from you now? They're not Emma, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. I met someone 5 years after I became Sarah. I got married. I had 3 children with him. They grew up knowing me as Sarah Mitchell. They have no idea that their mother is someone else. That I had a daughter before them. That everything they know about my past is a lie. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Dr. Phil stood up again. He paced the stage, processing what he'd just heard. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the room. He called out to his producers. Robin, are they here? He asked, referring to someone off camera. A voice from backstage. Yes. Bring them in. The audience collectively gasped. Sarah's face went white. What? Who's here? The studio doors opened, and 3 adults walked in, 2 women and a man, all in their 20s. Sarah's children. The one she'd raised as Sarah Mitchell. Mom? The youngest daughter said, her voice breaking. What is happening? But that wasn't all. Behind them, another woman entered. Older. Mid-50s. And when Sarah saw her, she let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. Emma, she whispered. The woman Emma stood at the edge of the stage, her arms crossed, her face a mask of controlled fury. Hello, Rebecca. Or should I call you Sarah? I'm not even sure anymore who I'm supposed to be talking to. Dr. Phil stepped between them, his hands raised. Everyone, please. Sit down. We're going to work through this, but we need to do it carefully. The next 30 minutes were some of the most emotionally raw television ever broadcast. Sarah's 3 younger children learning that their mother had an entire previous life. Emma confronting the woman who abandoned her 33 years ago. Dr. Phil mediating, guiding, sometimes just sitting in silence as people processed the impossible. Why didn't you come back for me? Emma asked, her voice shaking with decades of pain. Even after you were safe. Even after you remarried and had other children. Why didn't you come back? Sarah had no good answer. I was afraid. I was ashamed. And then too much time had passed. I didn't know how to come back. I didn't know how to explain. So you just started over, Emma said bitterly. You just became someone else and pretended I never existed. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He stood up and walked to his desk at the side of the stage. He picked up a phone, dialed a number, and spoke quietly for a moment. Then he returned to the group. I've just called a family therapist who specializes in reunification and identity trauma, he said. She's going to be here tomorrow. All of you, Sarah, Rebecca, whoever you are, Emma, and your 3 children, you're going to start working through this with professional help. Not for cameras. Not for show. For real. Sarah looked at him with surprise. You'd do that? This is bigger than entertainment, Dr. Phil said, and his voice had that tone that reminded everyone why he'd been doing this for 2 decades. This is about 4 people who deserve answers, healing, and a chance at genuine connection. Emma, you've been without a mother for 33 years. These 3 kids just found out their mother is someone else entirely. This family needs help, and we're going to provide it. The white envelope still sat on Dr. Phil's desk. And what was inside would prove to be the final piece of the puzzle. Sarah, Dr. Phil said, picking up the envelope. Before we end today's taping, I need to show you something. When your children first reached out to our show, they sent us documentation. Birth certificates. Marriage records. And this. He opened the envelope and pulled out a photograph. It was old, faded, from the early 1990s. It showed a young woman holding a toddler. Emma kept this, Dr. Phil said. It's the only photo she has of you two together. She's carried it for 33 years, hoping one day she'd find you." He handed the photo to Sarah, who took it with shaking hands. When she saw it, she broke down completely. Not the careful, controlled crying from earlier, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place of profound grief. Emma stood frozen, watching the woman who was her mother and a stranger all at once. Dr. Phil let the moment breathe. He didn't rush to fill the silence. He didn't push for words. He understood that some pain is too deep for immediate resolution. But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. Emma walked across the stage. Slowly. Each step deliberate. She reached Sarah, who looked up at her with red, swollen eyes. And then Emma did something that shocked everyone. She knelt down in front of her mother and took her hands. "I'm angry," Emma said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "I'm so angry I can barely breathe. You left me. You built a whole new life without me. You had other children, gave them the mother I never had. And I don't know if I can ever forgive you for that." Sarah nodded, unable to speak. "But," Emma continued, "you're still my mother. And I've spent 33 years wondering if you were alive, if you ever thought about me, if I mattered at all to you. And now I know. I know you're alive. I know you think about me, or you wouldn't be crying like this. And I know I mattered enough that you're finally telling the truth." Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. The studio audience, many of whom were crying themselves, erupted in applause. Dr. Phil wiped his own eyes, a rare sight for viewers who'd seen him handle thousands of difficult cases. "This," he said, addressing the camera directly, "is what healing looks like. Not perfect. Not easy. But honest. Real. And painful as hell." He turned back to the family. "The road ahead is going to be hard. There's going to be anger, resentment, grief for the years lost. But if you're willing to do the work, if you're willing to be honest with each other the way you've been honest here today, there's a chance at something real." Sarah's 3 younger children, who had been silent through most of this, finally spoke. The oldest daughter asked, "Do we call you Sarah or Rebecca?" Sarah looked at Emma, then at her other children. "I think," she said slowly, "I need to figure out who I actually am. I've been running for so long I forgot how to just be." Dr. Phil nodded. "That's the work. Finding out who you are when you're not running, not hiding, not performing. Just you." As the episode ended, Dr. Phil made one more promise. "I'm going to follow up with this family," he told the audience. "In 3 months, 6 months, a year. We're going to document their journey, not for ratings, but because I believe in accountability. If I say we're going to help, we're going to help. And I want everyone watching to see that healing is possible, even from the deepest wounds." He looked directly at the camera, his expression serious. If you're living a lie right now, if you're running from something, if you've hurt people you love and don't know how to make it right, this is your sign. It's never too late to tell the truth. It's never too late to start healing. But you have to take that first step. 6 months later, Dr. Phil brought the family back. The change was visible immediately. Sarah, she'd decided to keep that name, finding that Rebecca felt like a stranger, looked lighter somehow. Less burdened. Emma sat beside her, and while there was still tension, there was also something new, tentative connection. "We've been in therapy twice a week," Emma told Dr. Phil. "It's been hell. Some sessions, I leave so angry I can't see straight. But we're talking. Really talking. And my siblings," she gestured to Sarah's other children. "They've been incredible. They could have shut me out, but they didn't." The youngest sister spoke up. "Emma's our sister. We didn't get to grow up together, but we're making up for it now. And Mom, or Sarah, or whoever she is," she smiled slightly, "she's doing the work. She's answering our questions, even when it hurts." Dr. Phil smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. This is what accountability looks like. This is what happens when people choose truth over comfort, healing over hiding. The legacy of that episode extended far beyond one family. In the weeks following the broadcast, Dr. Phil's producers reported receiving thousands of messages from viewers. People who'd been living with secrets. People who'd been searching for lost family members. People who'd been running from their past. "I thought I was the only one," one message read. "Seeing Sarah's story made me realize I can't keep running forever." Another. "I've been looking for my mother for 40 years. After watching this, I hired a private investigator. I found her. We're meeting next month." The episode became one of the most watched in Dr. Phil's history. Not because of shock value, but because it touched something universal, the human need for truth, connection, and redemption. For Dr. Phil himself, the case left a lasting impact. In interviews afterward, he spoke about it differently than his usual cases. "Sometimes," he said, "we think we're just doing a show. Just helping people work through their problems for an hour of television. But every once in a while, you get a case that reminds you why this matters." Sarah's case, that was one of those. He kept his promise. The show followed the family for 2 years, documenting their healing journey. There were setbacks. There were sessions where progress seemed impossible. But slowly, painfully, they rebuilt something that had been shattered decades ago. The white envelope, the photograph, remained a symbol. Emma framed it, not just the old photo of her and her mother, but also a new one. Taken in Dr. Phil's studio on their 6-month follow-up. 5 people, Emma, Sarah, and Sarah's 3 other children. All together. All smiling, despite everything. "This is what's possible," Dr. Phil said at the end of that follow-up episode, holding up both photos. "When people choose courage over comfort. When they choose truth over lies. When they choose connection over isolation." He looked directly at the camera one last time. "Whatever you're running from, whatever secret you're keeping, whatever wound you're hiding, there's a path to healing. But it starts with one terrifying, necessary step, telling the truth." The lesson was clear: some lies are too heavy to carry forever. And sometimes, the hardest thing you'll ever do is also the thing that finally sets you free.